Welcome everybody to Bergen's. This is a quick talk about TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing video games, and specifically on the server Red Winter, where we run Cyberpunk RED in a West Marches type of world, where multiple game masters run different games at different times, but they're all in an interconnected universe, where a player character's progress carries on from one game to the next. Their interactions can happen either in gigs or during downtime, where it is on text on Discord on our server there, and they get to trade while they're not playing in games or do all these kinds of downtime activities, and all of that progress carries over to, from one gig to the next. So welcome aboard. We hope you enjoyed this talk between a couple of GMs and a couple of server owners like myself, and you're more than welcome to join us on the server. The links will be down below. Before going ahead with the video, I will warn that we are a bunch of mature, older gentlemen hanging out, having a talk, and just enjoying our time. Sometimes we let loose with what we say, and if you get offended, just stop watching from now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Red Winter. Talks about tabletop role-playing games, TTRPGs, talks in general, and we are going to be discussing different game mastering tips and tricks and things we do while we GM a game. And this is going to be general TTRPGs GMing tips, so we might mention something about Dungeons & Dragons, or if somebody has any experience with a different game, they might bring that up. The whole idea is just to convey what we think about being like a dungeon master or game master, somebody that creates this imaginary fantasy or sci-fi world for other players to enjoy and to interact with. And to me, I'm just going to preface that playing TTRPGs boils down to just hanging around a table, basically, with friends, rolling some dice, interacting with a story, and having a laugh. And that's the end of it all, basically, for me. We are joined here by one of the game masters of our server, Mr. Luke. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your experience with TTRPGs and how you are enjoying GMing for Cyberpunk.
Hey guys, my name's Luke. I'm 30-odd years old. I've been DMing for about 3 years now, mainly D&D 5e, and then recently started running Cyberpunk RED games for the server and a home campaign. Played a lot of Cyberpunk 2020 in the meantime, and a lot of D&D as well. And yeah, I really enjoy being on the server and running games on the server. It's been pretty cool.
Awesome. So a couple of things I kind of just generally want to discuss. We can have like a back and forth. You can tell me your opinion whenever, and feel free to chime in as I'm talking. The first thing that always comes up is, how do you create a world? How do you come up with a world where players would enjoy it, whether it is role play, combat, or something related to that player's backstory?
All right. Oof, that's a big one.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm not going to ask you to like monologue for 5 minutes answering all of those. It's just in general, this is the topic that we want to talk about now first. And then we'll, like go over one thing at a time. And I guess I'll start. I love to allow the player to feel that they have an important role in the world, not necessarily feel like heroes, but the fact that whatever actions they take will affect the larger scale of the world. As in, one time we had player characters basically fail a mission, and then because of that failure in that mission, other gigs or essentially missions came up based on what they did, and they're like, oh wow, I did this, I was there, even though we failed it. It has created a different path or arc in this world, in this server universe, basically. And this is specifically talking about Red Winter as a West Marches server, where there's a lot of people. We have over 60 players actually, and whatever gigs we run, different GMs running different gigs. Whatever gigs we run, they're interconnected, and people have an effect on other people's gigs based on what they do on theirs. So that's one of the biggest things that I enjoy allowing players to experience, and I think that just makes it so that they feel that they are rooted in the world, and that it's not just a one-off, random, unimportant thing.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so probably from character creation slide of things, one thing that I love about Cyberpunk, I loved it in 2020, I love it in Red as well, is it's a life path generator. It's like the life path, because I think that is a really good way of getting players to feel like, to kind of I guess kind of getting them to feel like the character's there. Is that this is a person with like living, like kind of living, breathing character, because you've got life events in there. Whereas, like, I mean, I've run a lot of D&D, and I'm a really big fan of like the Eberron setting and the Faerun setting. But the problem is that to get a player to help get a player into those settings,
Mhm.
because it's like somebody, right, there you go play Lord of the Rings, and don't ever tell them any of the lore behind Lord of the Rings, or don't ever, where like there's a lot of lore to take on board to kind of to feel interconnected to the world. Whereas with Cyberpunk, one of the things I love is that like it's easy to make the players feel as though the world's theirs, because let's face it, you just drop them in and go, right, Arasaka, they don't need to know about all the history. They can just sort of, right, big evil Japanese arms corporation. Sony times 5 on Coke. Militech, big evil American arms corporation. There you go. They've got the concepts.
Yeah.
So I think I guess for making the players feel like the world's theirs. Red in 2020, I really love because that life path thing is
Mhm.
right from the character creation. You're getting they're helping like the characters feel like they're their own characters. You know what I mean? They're not bit players in a world. It's their story.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I feel like the world of cyberpunk in general is much more relatable than some other fantasy TTRPG, specifically because, as you said the other day, we were talking about this after a gig. It's closer to our real life environment and just everything that is in our lives currently. Just with more high tech and things that we can actually imagine and comprehend. I feel like that really does play an important role, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's Red's only set maybe what is it 25, 20, 26 years into the future,
Pretty
and
much, yeah.
and the technology is and okay, yeah, not all of the technology is similar, but the concepts behind the technology aren't too far into the realm of sci-fi. Using grain alcohol instead of petrol isn't that too much isn't too much of a jump.
Exactly.
Um, if you look at 2020 when it was it was set, first came out like 30 odd years ago. Is it 30 foot? I think it's 30 or 40 years ago, isn't it? And
Hmm.
a fax was the high point of technology. Whereas
Yeah.
now, if you look at somebody's the agent in game, there's not that much of a difference between that and an iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. It's a basically a smartphone with a mini AI kind of thing that can allow you to just search for basic like keywords or information or images, and we pretty much have all that technology in our present day. And I don't want to mention any specific brands, but there's a search engine where if you drop in an image, it could get you most of the closest images to it. And in a lot of cases, it would surprise you how it could do that. It's
Yeah.
crazy how it can do that, and that's pretty much what an agent in cyberpunk lore is, and that's why we do something called a library search, where the AI doesn't understand what you're looking for. It just has specific like key features or keywords or whatever that it sifts through lots of data that it has access to and gives you what you're specifically looking for, and then you can kind of make sense of it and organize it and comprehend it in your mind. So that's what a library search is basically.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things I do for my home game as well to help the players feel like it's their world is I have something for outward sessions called the lead system. So
Hmm.
basically, there's tips, rumors, scream sheets, and other media. And basically, between sessions, as long as they haven't, as long as we haven't finished the session, a gig where they're still in the middle of like a warehouse, something like that, they can use this system to make either streetwise checks. So like, you know, knowing people in the street, that kind of thing, like knowing people in bars, to make a rumors check. So like that's information that, you're in the bar and you overhear somebody talking about a recent raid on a warehouse or something like that. Or they can make tips checks as well, where they basically that's like your local expert. So you have a home area where where you obviously know everybody, where you know what's going on, and somebody from that area kind of comes to you like as a friend, say, "Oh, look, hey, I heard about this. Maybe this could be really good for you." And then from those like rumors and tips and the jobs they're offered, we build like I build the kind of gigs. So they have each person can make one rumors and one tips check a week, and then there's
Hmm.
official jobs offered by their current employer. And then from that, they get to vote on as a group in character. Right, what do we want to run? What job do we want to do this week? And then I build the gig around that. But in between that, what they can do is do investigation work, like gig prep.
Yeah.
So stuff that kind of might otherwise kind of take place in a session, but is kind of like because we're a lot of us are parents as well. We don't have like the most, like, we don't have a massive amount of time to play gigs in. So like getting stuff up, like doing investigation work and stuff like that, they can ask other players to help them out, and I get them to do skill checks to kind of see what information they find out, how successful they are. You know, they can spend a little bit of money to maybe they'll say, okay, I want to go investigate this. I want to go up the bar and talk to this person who knows about this thing. I was like, right, well, you can spend 50 eddies to kind of just buy the basic booze as you drink with him. Or if you want to spend that extra 100 eddies outside of the to buy like the top shelf booze, you'll get like a bonus to the rolls. So it's like kind of just using the skill checks and stuff like that to kind of help them create the gigs that they want to run without like kind of like from the legwork they've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I like that. And I remember one of my gigs I ran in a specific nightclub that's more high-end, Club Atlantis, which is present in Cyberpunk 2020, Cyberpunk RED, and even Cyberpunk 2077. Basically, one of the players who was there decided, okay, I want to get the most expensive drink that they have to offer, and I allowed him to do that, but it was pretty expensive, especially at the time. We were just starting with the server universe. It was fresh off like a few gigs, and not a lot of people had any eddies in the hundreds that they could easily just splurge on, like on drinks and stuff like that with. So having to pay 100 eddies for a bottle of whatever drink, because it's high class and fancy, was a huge hit to the budget for that person. They did it anyway. Because, style over substance, baby, right?
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
And they used that to be able to get into the VIP booths and speak to somebody before anybody else was able to get there. And that was the contact that they were supposed to go meet with. And he had a special relationship with that contact person. And it is, to date, still going, to the point that there's a gig coming up in a few days based around that relationship that started way back, like 3 months ago, I think now, when that person decided to buy the most expensive drink and go in first. You see, like, all of these things connected, and it just became part of the large arc. So that's awesome, like rewarding players for such choices. And a lot of people usually think like, okay, we're just on this game for the ride. That's not true. You can decide to do things, and that will completely change the course of how the game will go. It's something that no GM could plan for, and it'll just come up. And then the GM will have to either improvise on the spot and reward you for it, or write something for the upcoming gig that is based off of that.
Yeah. I'm a very big fan of, like, I think it is a lot. I think Cyberpunk is a lot more open in terms of what the players can do, where the players can go, because it's just as simple as you could be driving down the street and something happens. Like, you're describing a scene, okay, you transit into the gig that's planned, you describe something, and then next thing you know, you've completely gone off on a different route. And the players now, instead of going to this gig, they found themselves, I don't know, like, say there was a gang fight, and one of them stumbles, like one of the gangers stumbles into one of the players, and the player reacts by pushing him back. And the next thing you know, the players aren't going to the gig anymore. They're now in a gang fight because stuff happens, real life happens.
Exactly. So I remember, just to kind of like go back to, I know I'm going backwards with this, but I never really introduced my experience with GMing and DMing. So I'll just say now, I have run Dungeons & Dragons as a DM for 5 consecutive years. One of those years was online for obvious reasons. And then before that, I had played the game for nearly 2 decades. Nearly. Like, I learned it when I was a teenager. And it just goes to show you how old I am now. Late 30s, So one of the players I've played with on a table, in person, around the table, always said things like, oh, the GM wants it that way. Oh, the GM didn't let us go there because he wants us to go here. But that's not true. And he was more like, he was a very passive person, and he never really, like, let's say, took lead or anything like that in general, as a player, not just as his, like, in-game character. So, for example, if there's 3 player characters talking to one NPC. One of the player characters would tell that NPC, oh, hey, you know what? Yeah, we'll definitely help you with that. That player would immediately shut down and think to himself, like, oh, now we're stuck helping this guy. He would not speak up. He wouldn't say, like, neither in character nor out of character, I don't want to do this. Let's not help this guy. That's a waste of time. Let's do that. He would never say that. And he would always then think, oh, the GM wanted us to do this. And that was one of the things that really, really bothered me. Like, as a GM, I put a lot of time, a lot of effort planning, setting up these different locations, these different places. I spend hours upon hours. That's why we used to play once a week in the in-person tables, because I would spend like most of that week just preparing all of these different possibilities. If they go to this place, what is this place about? Who would be there? What would they find, etc. I would roll that stuff up, or if I was running it on a module, I'd make sure to read up on it and get all the notes and memorize pretty much everything. I'd memorize the personalities of the characters that are going to come up, their little mannerisms, how they spoke, what their alignments were, etc. And then the players think that I'm railroading them, and it just bothered. Like, that was the one thing that really annoyed me. And I want people to realize that, like, as GMs, we put so much work to, like, we try to give you guys like a sandbox and let you just have fun with it. That's the whole point of TTRPGs. It's not a video game. It's not. There's no invisible wall. If you want to try and jump over a cliff, you can do it. You're just gonna take the fall damage, Yeah. So, and that's one thing I love about tabletop role-playing games, and that's honestly why I've played them consecutively for years, and I love presenting these worlds to other players and allowing them to experience that kind of thing. And it just makes it so much more fun for me as a game master. It's so rewarding when I see players become creative with things and just do things on their own. And I've also heard that here, like on the server, people are like, wow, how these like different stories interconnect and how things come together, even though that like one story happened with one game master and another story happened with a different game master. Then the player characters take that information and use it during like the downtime chat or in character chats to interact, and things happen. And based on that, we as game masters can also build like the next gig based on that interaction and have things like tie in together. And it just makes it so much more fun. It feels like a rich living world where you could literally do anything you want and you're not restricted by video game mechanics.
Yeah, man. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, I like in my home game, and like that tips and the lead system I was talking about. Mm-hmm. I always like when like we're doing the server, the hustles. I always ask for like a little bit of an RP note. Like, come on, like give me a little bit of flavor. And then all of a sudden, they started using, like, one of them was a nomad, and he started driving a band around on his hustles. Like, that was kind of his thing. He's like, oh, I've been taking this band on tours. And then all of a sudden, the fixer was like, yeah, well, I set up the gigs for them, and this is where I got my cut from. And I was like, they're world building without me having to do anything. This is the best thing ever. Like, it literally required no effort on my part. All I'd done is I'd give them a mechanic to use, like the hustle from the book, ask them for a little bit of RP flavor, and then without even planning it amongst themselves, it started like to world build and use this kind of interconnected kind of like law between them.
Yeah.
And it was like, dude, this is awesome. This is like just like it's like a peak moment. I was just so proud of them.
Exactly, and these are the moments that essentially I live for when I GM. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
seeing how creative players can get and what they can do with these little threads or little cues. It's just amazing. So much fun.
What tricks have you got for getting players to buy into a world? How do you try and hook your players in? Because as much as I love everyone, like, it is one of my favorite D&D settings. There's so much lore there with the dragon marked houses and the last war, and also I found that a lot of my players really had a hard time, especially because they're new D&D players as well, or new to TTRPGs and altogether. They found it really hard to kind of connect with the world and connect with the players. Whereas we've been playing Cyberpunk RED for 2 weeks with them, and that's it. They're boom for the in. They're spending all the free time thinking and writing about the characters. So I was just wondering what tricks have you got for getting your players to buy into a world?
Well, I'll answer that, but I think what you just said goes back to what we were discussing in the beginning, where the universe of Cyberpunk, that lore, is much more relatable to our real life situation than a fantasy game is. So it just makes it that much more easier to get into. In my case, I would do a few things. First of all, I would describe the world for the players to allow them to envision it in their way. I wouldn't bore them with too much detail and description, but I would give them enough to kind of like allow them to see the differences between the world of Cyberpunk and theirs. For example, as little as saying something like, you scan your agent over this holographic display and you pay. That's it, done. Like that makes people think, oh wow, that's a technology that exists. Awesome. Yeah, we have that in real life right now. We can do like QR code scanning or RFID exchange of data or whatever. It's available, But when you describe it visually, that little visual cue there allows people to see it in their way, in their imagination, and just feel like, wow, this thing is fun. This is interesting. This is new. They want to see or experience more. So I describe the world for them. Sometimes I say things like, there's a slight overcast, a tiny bit of rain. You can see reflections of the neon lights on shops on the streets. And people are just like, oh, wow, they're in it now. And that's it. It's that one short sentence gets them in. Like, they're now in the mindset of that character. They're seeing the world around them. I try to make it clear what's there. Like, on the far right corner, there's this, and on the opposite side, there's that. So now they know, like, okay, I want to go over there. Like, they have directional, they have things that allow them to know where to go, where certain directions are. So when I tell them, okay, you're going to that far right corner, they know that the other thing I mentioned is now behind them. So they can just like envision it and be there. So kind of like orientate them in the world, give them landmarks or little bits of descriptions here. That's one thing. That's very minimal thing that can get people more invested or into the world. The other thing is, like I said earlier, try to make it so that whatever they do actually matters. So, for example, with our West Marches world, people are still rolling up characters, and and we always recommend roll up your life path and give us your role specific life path. As GMs, we do take that into consideration. Like one of your first characters, the lawman, and you sent me that his life path is that he has a vengeance against bozos, and you saw how that gig went. And
terribly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no. I meant like I didn't mean about like whether good or bad. I just meant like instead of going to an old rundown hospital, you guys as a group collectively decided, let's go to this gang or hangout where the bozos are hanging out and take them out because that was your character's background.
Yeah.
So these little things I feel are like really, really allow the player to feel invested in the world and that what they do matters.
Yeah, I find like giving them little kind of things, giving them little kind of victories, and it doesn't have to be like a, I'm not in terms of combat, like not a victory, but like they achieve something and it begins to matter. It like they help somebody in the local bodega, and then they go back like a couple of weeks later, or they go past a couple of weeks later, and the shopkeeper comes out and greets them by name. You know what I mean? They're now hooked they've got a connection, to the world. And just little stuff like that, and like you say, it's like the little visual details as well. Like one of my players, when we played 2020 a while back, I described somebody handing him a business card, which was just like a little piece of plastic with a transparent plastic with a small aluminium kind of like a border. And then described like how when he actually like touched it and activated it, it came up almost like an advert for the company on this, and like he said, dude, I didn't stop thinking about that for like 3 weeks afterwards. Like, how does it work? What you could do with them and stuff like that. And I was like, and it was just a complete and utter like throwaway little just like detail. It wasn't like it wasn't meant to drive any kind of plot or anything like that, but it was just like you say, like the little kind of details that flesh out the world. I think like do really kind of hook your players in the what kind of like you the first that you talking about there when the lawman went to the bodega and he talked about the guy like sticking his tongue in the wound and like slurping. I was like, dude, that's such a class. Yeah, I love that. I live for stuff like that,
Yeah, definitely. So somebody just sent me a message. He's at work and can't talk, but it's one of our listeners who said that he sometimes allows players to be in an inconsequential set piece situationally and allows them to just role play through it as they like. And that's definitely a clever hint. I've done that a lot. I always tell players, okay, you guys are now in this situation, like let's say driving to the location. You guys have in game, which would be 20 minutes driving there. Feel free to RP it. And they can just sit there and RP and talk. And I'll ask them. I'll let them talk all they want and plan. Like even if it takes like real time, 15 to 20 minutes. Then I say, okay, well, if you guys don't have anything else more to discuss or roleplay, you guys are going to be arriving. And some people are just like, we're fine with that. Or some people are like, oh, wait, hold on. I wanted to say this. I forgot to trade data. I forgot to tell this person that I have a radio communicator. And I love it. And that's a really good idea. So thank you, our awesome... Also, Mod and GM Hendrix for that note there.
Yeah, I do something similar in D&D, like when they do long rests and they're taking watches. I give them that, like, that's like time for them when it's just two of them, like kind of have like this is when the players can chat between themselves when they play like the party, because it's a nice quiet moment. You can have like, sometimes you've got a big party of maybe 6, 7. It's quite hard. It's sometimes you get people lost. Whereas if you give them this little quiet moment to kind of chat between themselves, and just, the conversations don't really have to have any kind of meaning. They can just be talking about what they've seen that day, if they're all right. But it's nice just to give the players that time to kind of chat amongst themselves, and
Yeah.
just let them kind of develop as characters, really.
Exactly. To be their character, to live that character and try to role play it out. Very, very
Yeah.
much, yeah. I know that another co-owner of the server here, Sean, is with us. He'd like to probably hop in and share some info. Sean, you can hop in whenever you'd like. Welcome aboard, buddy.
Hey, man.
Just off the back of what you're asking about how you link people into the world, the one thing that I've found that Berg does quite well is provide like a little bit of commonality between games. I can imagine in a campaign setting it to be quite impactful. Like you said about that local bodega, like describe it, make it a real place, make it feel like they're constantly going to that place. That is their place in the world. Also, Fed in his gig provided like picture references from just, they weren't active. It wasn't a battle map. It wasn't anything. It was just like, here's a picture of the rundown library that you're currently in, and it just brings everyone's imagination into the same sphere. The details might be slightly different from person to person, but I do feel like if everyone's kind of picturing the edges of the world, if you will, that you're presenting the same way,
Yeah.
the innards start to build themselves.
Absolutely, definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. I think reference material is important. It is very good for a GM to invest a little bit of time and find things that relate to what they're trying to convey. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. It's not a battle map, as Sean just said. It is a reference image where people can have a similar idea of where they are, like that rundown library or a train station or something like that.
Or a dance machine.
Or a dance machine, yeah, like your Dance Revolution game. Excellent, yeah. I found that even having a little bit of like MS Paint lines and rectangles could do wonders. I once had a gig where people were at a road T junction, and there was like a rundown building, another really high rise where somebody was like trying to snipe from, and then a building across their target that had an open rooftop that somebody was trying to like go on top of in a scout. And people just kind of like got lost. Like, where's this person? Where's that person? How far away are we from each other? So I thought, give me a moment. And I literally put in like 3 rectangles on MS Paint and what would be 6 lines describing what the road is. And I put little like circles with just, freehand circles. This is where you are. This is where you are. This is where you are. And I put like the letter inside the circle, and that's it. And I showed it to them on like literally on MS Paint, and I just showed them screenshot. No streaming, no VTT, nothing like that. No major art. And that's when people they got it. It clicked, and they're like, oh, okay. So then the game picked up. It literally got faster. People just knew where things were. It's like, oh, I go back to the vending machine. I go over to that corner where the building is. I'll go over to the guy that's sniping on top and watch his back. And the game just flowed so much better that way. So absolutely, Sean, I definitely agree. Good point right there.
I'm pretty. I really like having visual. So that's why I love. And I probably spend too much time on them, but I love building battle maps mainly because, and not just of where the people are, but okay, there's a petrol station over the road, so you can see the petrol station as well, and even down to there's 4 toilet cubicles in that petrol station. Just because, I don't know, man. It helps me kind of as I'm prepping as a DM, think of what's in the area, what the players can what's around for them to use.
Mm-hmm.
But also just because I don't know, I've only ever ran online. I've never ran in person because I live in a small village in Spain. And I just find using Roll20 and then later Foundry and being able to have so the players can see the line of sight and everything, that the dynamic lighting and all those kind of stuff just makes. I don't know. I really like it. I really like adding that kind of element to my games. But that's just that's because I'm a bit of a geek as well.
Aren't we all?
I think going in depth like that on battle maps also provides a level of exploration that you can't really get from just describing the world, or at least I struggle from just like theatre of the mind. Like if you've put those 4 cubicles in there, they now exist as a place for a player to enter. And what that player does in those cubicles, you have very little control over a GM. And that can take games totally off the deep end, or totally flesh out a new world, or provide you with something that, oh shit, I hadn't thought about that. I'm also like you, I spend far too much time on the maps, even though they look rudimentary, but I'm always adding those like logical points, a kitchen, a bathroom, like you say. I think it helps.
It's playing The Sims with battle maps, basically.
Thank you for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed that. That was part 1 of our GM talks, and I will be uploading part 2 soon after this. If you enjoyed the video, please let us know by giving a thumbs up, leave feedback in the comment section, maybe share it with friends, and subscribe for more content.